Magneto's daughter, Polaris, just got an accessory in Rivals, so I got curious. How many characters in the game have children? From baby gods to future kingpins, we've even got triplets, quintuplets, and an entire army. I read the first comic appearance of every Rivals character's kid. We kick it off with Journey into Mystery number 114. The main plot of the comic is about Thor fighting the Absorbing Man, but our character doesn't actually show up in that, only appearing in a bonus story at the end about the goddess Iduna traveling to Odin's palace to deliver some immortality apples. Unfortunately, she's being stalked by Fenris, the wolf god, and also one of Loki's children, along with Hela, a snake, and a horse. Imagine being Hela and showing up to this family reunion. Anyways, he transforms into a human and tries to convince Iduna to let him guard the apples. But she doesn't trust his strange hands, his strange voice, and his strange eyes. So he transforms back into a wolf, just in time for Hakun the Hunter to show up, throwing his heat-seeking battle axe at Fenris. And despite his ability to shrink, the axe still ends up hitting him at an infinitesimally small size. The comic ending with Hakun and Iduna continuing along the road, while a text box mentions this was the true story of Little Red Riding Hood. We get the newest Rivals NPC in X-Men number 49. Professor Xavier has died and the X-Men disbanded, though Angel is back at the mansion to retrieve some stuff when Cerebro suddenly activates. Angel calling out to Jean Grey to summon the rest of the team, which isn't a great time for Beast as he's currently skydiving, though Iceman is able to catch him. It turns out Magneto has also seemingly died, as we cut to his followers and their new leader, Mesmero, the mutant that set off Cerebro, as he's created his own device that will subconsciously summon every mutant in the world, though one of them, Lorna Dane, slips on some of Iceman's ice, snapping her out of it, and they end up talking before heading back to Bobby's apartment. Unfortunately, Mesmero also shows up, freezing Iceman in place before bowing to Lorna, as it's eventually revealed she's Magneto's daughter, later going by the name Polaris. We get our only non-biological child in Avengers number 57. Hank Pym has just abandoned his date with the Wasp to go look at bacteria in his lab, though the moment he leaves, a synthezoid shows up, Wasp calling him a Vision. They get into a fight, but he suddenly just shuts off, so Janet calls up the rest of the Avengers to investigate, though Vision quickly wakes up and tries to fight the entire team, before they're able to convince him to explain why he's here. Him mentioning he actually doesn't really know why he's here. He just knows his creator, Ultron, told him to kill the Avengers, deciding to help by bringing them to his base, which turns out to have been Ultron's plan all along, fighting the Avengers with a giant mech suit. But he didn't plan for Vision to actually befriend the Avengers, his own son turning on him and then demolishing him into a pile of scrap, though they can't quite find his head, and the comic ends with a kid finding it and tossing it away. We get easily the strongest kid in Fantastic Four Annual number 6. Sue Storm is pregnant, but the cosmic radiation that gave them their powers might kill the baby, so Reed, Johnny, and Ben head into the negative zone to search for Element X, which will apparently solve their problems, flying around for a bit before they're suddenly kidnapped by some alien creatures, and are confronted by their leader, the immortal Annihilus. He steals their jetpacks and starts toying with them, releasing a giant boot to stomp them, and then setting an angry sponge after the Human Torch. Of course, the Fantastic Three win the fight, and steal Annihilus's cosmic wand, which is the source of his immortality, but also contains the right energies to save Sue's baby. They also steal a ship, nearly getting away, before Annihilus shoots them down, landing on a floating rock inside some weird zone where their powers don't work. Annihilus showing up and starting to taunt them, Reed making a deal to exchange the cosmic rod for their jetpacks. But before giving it back, he drains the rod of its energy. Finally, they're able to fly back through the portal, right in time to deliver Element X, so Sue can give birth to their healthy baby boy, Franklin Richards. Wow, these last few kids sure have been happy and healthy. I hope our next comic doesn't change that as we hop into Marvel Preview number 2. Kicking it off with the Punisher spotting a sniper planning to assassinate a politician, so he shoots the sniper first, but they actually turn out to be one of Punisher's old war buddies, though he doesn't get much time to speak to him as a helicopter drops a bomb on them, killing the sniper while Punisher runs away. It turns out this wasn't the first US soldier who's gone rogue recently, as Frank travels to Chicago to ask one of his other war buddies for information, though another sniper shows up, barely missing the Punisher and accidentally killing his friend. Frank tries to chase him down, but he activates a wristwatch which suddenly burns him alive. Frank decides his only option now is to visit the family of the first sniper we saw, and while driving, he starts to reminisce on his own family, getting a glimpse at his kids, Lisa and Frank Castle Jr., as they head to a park for a nice day out. Unfortunately, some mobsters were using that park for an execution, as you do, deciding they can't leave any witnesses, and gunning down Frank's entire family. He also gets hit, but barely survives. We then cut back to the present as he's arrived at the family's house, though they don't trust him as his face is all over the news, so he slaps the shit out of the mother before a grenade launches through the window, setting the entire house on fire. Frank quickly saving the entire family and gaining their trust, letting them know that her husband visited a mansion before going rogue, so he heads there and steals a guard's outfit, as the place ends up belonging to the International Industrial Alliance, a group that wants to start a revolution in America, immediately seeing through Frank's disguise and attacking him with a load of high-tech weaponry. He decides not to fight them though, instead running outside to find the mansion's power source, placing a bomb on it and blowing the entire property to smithereens as the comic ends. We get our first alternate future child in X-Men 141, picking it off in the future where Kitty Pryde is wandering the wasteland of New York, being attacked by some bandits before Wolverine saves her, arriving back at their base to meet up with Rachel Summers, Jean Grey's daughter, using her powers along with a machine Franklin Richards created to send Kitty back to the present to try and stop the world from going to shit. Unfortunately, she appears in the middle of a training session, nearly being killed before Nightcrawler saves her, and she's able to warn them that a senator is about to be assassinated, which will set off a wave of anti-mutant hysteria. We cut back to the future though, as the mutants are desperately trying to keep Kitty's body safe, though some Sentinels find them, killing Franklin, as we cut back to the present to see the X-Men arrive at the Senate, just in time for Mystique's Brotherhood of Evil Mutants to show up, ready to assassinate Senator Kelly as the comic ends. We get our shortest story by far in What If number 34. Now, most What If comics feature about 2 or 3 different stories in them, but this one has 70 different what ifs crammed into it. So I'm just gonna skip over all of the ones that don't matter to this video. Though here's a couple of my favorite titles. What if Aunt May was Ant-Man? What if Ghost Rider had possessed Grandpa? What if all the superheroes moved to Toledo, Ohio? What if the Watcher grew hair? What if Ghost Rider had possessed a baby? What if Bruce Banner's pants didn't stretch? What if Spider-Man married the Black Widow? What if the Fantastic Four became bananas? What if the Watchers watched each other? What if the Silver Surfer, White Tiger, Knight Rider, Iceman, and Moon Knight fought Wendigo in a snowstorm? And oh, we'll find our character in the story What If Him had married her, having 2 kids named Them. And that's it for the story. This single panel is literally the entire What If. I told you they crammed these things into the comic. Oh yeah, also if you're confused who I'm even talking about, Him is Adam Warlock's original name. We get another set of twins in Vision and the Scarlet Witch number 12. Wanda is about to go into labor, so Vision takes her to the hospital and asks Wonder Man to tell Wanda's student she won't be able to make it to their magic lesson. We then cut to the villain Necra as she revives Wonder Man's dead brother, the Grim Reaper, though she doesn't actually tell him he's undead, as apparently a zombie only acts like a zombie if they know they're a zombie, but if they think they're alive, they'll act like a normal person. Necra then also revives an assassin, telling him that they're gonna kill Wonder Man. We then cut back to Simon as he discovers Magneto at Wanda's house, getting into a brief fight before Magneto explains that he just wants to make sure his grandchild is born safely. Again cutting to Necra and the zombies as they raid a gun store for weapons, the shopkeeper actually shooting the Grim Reaper in the back, though he doesn't feel it, so Necra lies and says he missed. We then finally cut back to Wanda and Vision as their son, Tommy Maximoff, is born, though we quickly flash to Wonder Man and Magneto spotting Necra and her zombies, getting into a massive fight before Wonder Man notices the bullet hole, calling it out, which makes the Grim Reaper realize he's a zombie, turning on Necra and kissing her, which actually kills her, as apparently her power is drawn from hate, becoming stronger the more hate she feels. So the Grim Reaper kissing her overwhelmed her with love, draining her power and killing both of them? The comic ends by cutting back to Vision and Wanda, the Doctor letting them know that they're actually having twins, as Billy Maximoff pops out. We get the least detailed baby in Silver Surfer number 4. Norrin has been injured, and Mantis is helping him heal before they head off to confront the Elders of the Universe, a group that contains characters like the Grand Master, Gardener, and Collector, though for some reason she decides to lore dump her entire backstory to the Surfer, explaining that she fell in love with the swordsman, did some training, fucked a tree, went back to her home planet, gave birth to Qua, and then raised him until she decided he was ready to be alone. So now she's back to hanging with superheroes again. Eventually, they arrive at the Elders' meeting place, listening in on their conversation and discovering they want to kill Galactus. But before they're able to escape with the info, it's revealed the planet they're on is Ego, the living planet, ratting them out and getting into a massive fight before the Surfer starts setting off volcanoes as a distraction so they can get back into space. We get our first grandchild in Captain America number 1. Magneto and Professor X recently merged to form the villain Onslaught, Franklin Richards managing to take them down, but in the process accidentally creating a pocket universe that altered the timeline, this comic taking place in that universe. We start with Steve Rogers, who's just a regular modern day man with a wife and child, though that actually isn't our character for this comic. I have a more interesting Steve kid I want to talk about later, so we'll just keep going, as he has weird dreams of being some hero with a shield, before we cut to our actual character, Ricky Barnes, the granddaughter of Bucky Barnes, arguing with her brothers who are going to attend the World Party Rally, which turns out to be run by Nazis. We then cut back to Steve, who's contacted by an old guy calling him Captain, following him into a basement where he pulls out Cap's shield, quickly recognizing it from his dreams. The man says it belongs to Steve before the house is suddenly blown up, Cap bursting out of the rubble and beating the shit out of the guys who did it. The comic ending with Nick Fury getting pissed off, ordering S.H.I.E.L.D. to find Steve. We get one of the most tragic kids in Amazing Spider-Man number 418. MJ is going into labor, but she can't reach Peter, as he and Ben Reilly are currently fighting Mendel Stromm and his army of robo-children. Mary Jane's pregnancy keeps getting worse, but Mendel just won't go down until he tries to use some gas his mysterious boss gave him, which seemingly does nothing, and he's beaten, allowing Peter to rush to the hospital. It turns out the gas did do something though, as Ben's spidey senses are shut off, and he doesn't notice Mendel's boss sneaking up behind him, knocking him out, along with killing Mendel for failing his mission. Things aren't going great for the other Spider-Man either, as he's too late. Mary Jane's already given birth to their daughter, and you might be wondering, why isn't there a picture of the baby here? Well, it's because there isn't one. One of the nurses turns out to be a spy for Norman Osborn, kidnapping the baby and then disposing of it. We get another alternate future in Fantastic Four Annual number 1998. Ben Grimm is making a midnight snack, though he accidentally wakes up Franklin, asking Ben why the Fantastic Four all have different names despite being called a family. Ben explaining that the other three are a real family, but he's just a close friend. Franklin going back to bed as Ben starts to think that maybe he doesn't belong, as his sandwich is suddenly stolen by Johnny. Ben tries to chase him down, but they've recently moved into a new headquarters, Pier 4, so he doesn't quite know the layout, opening a door which suddenly teleports him onto an empty pier, being grabbed by Johnny, who flies him back to their headquarters, for Freedom's Plaza, which should be stuck in the negative zone right now. Once they arrive, Ben finally gets a good look at Johnny, realizing he's much older than he should be, as he calls up Reed and Sue, who are doing an archaeological dig on Mars, them asking him if the baby is here yet, as Johnny's wife Crystal walks in, though she isn't the one who's pregnant. It's actually Franklin's Wakandan princess girlfriend, Zawadi. Ben is very overwhelmed by all this, so he sits down on a chair, which turns out to be Johnny's shape-shifting son, Raymond Storm, aka Cosmic Ray. Ben throwing him through a wall, which also shows us Johnny's stepdaughter, Luna Maximoff. He then decides to go for a walk, ending up in a poker match with Wolverine, Doctor Strange, and Thor. Strange reading his mind and discovering he's from a different timeline. Quick lore lesson: Marvel's universe operates on a sliding timescale, meaning that, for example, even though 37 years should have passed between the Fantastic Four forming in 1961 and the year 1998, in universe, only about 10 years had passed, meaning the entire timeline is squished and then moved forwards. So the Fantastic Four actually formed in 1988. It's kinda confusing, but the alternative is constantly resetting the timeline like DC does. Anyways, all that is to say, this universe doesn't have a sliding timescale. So the Fantastic Four did form in 1961, and those 37 years between then and 1998 happened in real time. Ben heads back to Freedom Plaza to find Luna and her boyfriend, though he recognizes the guy's voice, as it turns out to be the villain Wizard in disguise, suddenly calling out for the rest of his Frightful Four, getting into a massive fight with every member of the family, including Franklin, who transforms into a Zero-Man form, becoming a portal to the negative zone that one of the Frightful Four, Blastar, just flies straight into, dragging the Wizard along with him. With them gone, Zawadi gives birth, and Ben finally realizes that it doesn't matter how you end up in the family, when you're here, you are family. Suddenly waking back up in the main universe, trying to explain what just happened as the comic ends. We get the only quintuplets on this list in New X-Men number 118. Things are going very badly for the X-Men. As Beast is in critical condition, there's a group called the U-Men harvesting mutant organs to give regular humans powers, and there's a bunch of protesters outside the mansion. Getting a brief glimpse at our characters, the Stepford Cuckoos, 5 of the newest students who are also Emma Frost's children, though she doesn't actually know that yet, as her eggs were harvested while she was in a coma. The U-Men are also trying to harvest a mutant's wings. She nearly gets away, but her powers are too new and she ends up getting caught, though Wolverine shows up to save her before we cut back to Emma Frost Frost, who's shown up to meet the U-Men's leader, though she just gets her nose broken before the comic ends with him announcing he's gonna turn the school into an organ farm. We get one of the strongest kids in X-Men Unlimited number 37. A farmer named Mr. Thatchell is performing a ritual to summon a mutant child who's been lost between the dimensions, telling him how his wife and son were killed by a mutant. So now he wants to use this kid's powers to kill all mutants. At the same time, Professor X and Kitty Pryde are grieving the recent death of Magic, when suddenly a bunch of weird alternate X-Men start falling from the skies, and it's revealed the ritual the farmer performed was secretly part of a plan by Mephisto to use the mystery child's dimensional teleportation powers to get every mutant in the multiverse in one place so he could steal their powers. He also mentions that the farmer's son wasn't killed by a mutant. He was a mutant who killed himself, sending the farmer to hell to be with his family. The mystery kid isn't a big fan of Mephisto's plan, though it's suddenly revealed he's Magic's son. Well, a Magic from another universe. And that when he was born, every dimension apparently had a claim to him, so he's just been stuck floating around between them all. And this alternate Magic teamed up with Mephisto just to see her son. Even with this reveal, he's still not a fan of the plan, and tells Magic he loves her before diving at Mephisto, using his powers to send everyone back to their original dimensions as the comic ends. And Magic's son is never seen again, just like our next kid, who appears in Epic Anthology number 1. Now this comic was actually originally supposed to be 3 different comics, but all 3 series were cancelled before they started, and their first issues were shoved into this one book. One of which being about sleep apnea. Anyways, we'll find our character in the story titled Strange Magic, kicking it off in a club where a stranger asks a couple to come follow her, and they just do it blindly. Though we cut to a man about to murder his wife, as a ghost boy floated into his room and said she's cheating on him. Luckily, a second child floats to the floor to save the day, this one being Sophia Strange, forgotten daughter of Doctor Strange, using magic to replace the guy's knife so the cops can arrest him. The next day, Sophia is interviewing for a job when she spots a guy stealing, chasing him down and discovering he's searching for his sister, who was part of the couple at the start. She'd apparently come to town to attend some vampire event and hasn't been heard from since. So Sophia agrees to go with him to the next one to find info, though it turns out to actually just be a big roleplay thing, none of the people there being real vampires. Except one guy who tries to read Sophia's mind, but she stops him and he mentions that he saw the guy's sister at the Sanguine Club. The comic ends by cutting back to the lady from the start, speaking to a demonic entity they've placed in the sister's body. And that's it. This storyline is never continued, though Sophia does show up in a single other comic. 2022's Wastelander's Doom. Reaching a kid who actually does become a recurring character, we've got Wolverine Origins number 10. Logan is being hunted by Dum Dum Dugan and a bunch of S.H.I.E.L.D. agents, though they can't get close to him as he's holding a mysterious device that could be a bomb. But he says it isn't one. It's simply a bargaining tool for Omega Red, tossing the device at Dugan before running away. Omega then shows up and rips through the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents, though they're eventually able to take him down. But it gives Logan enough time to escape, finding Jubilee, who's on the brink of death, quickly realizing he can't save her, and turning himself into S.H.I.E.L.D. in return for them calling her some medics. Dugan doesn't quite trust Logan though, dumping a couple bullets in his brain before transporting him back to their base, letting all the other guards go home while he stays to watch Wolverine alone, which wasn't really a smart plan, as someone in a guard disguise sneaks in, stabbing Dugan before slicing Wolverine's stomach open, a tear falling from Logan's eye and revealing the man responsible is his son, Daken. We're hopping over to the Ultimate Universe for Ultimate Spider-Man number 109. Peter has teamed up with Daredevil, Shang-Chi, Iron Fist, Doctor Strange, and Moon Knight to take down the Kingpin. But unfortunately, one of their members turned on them, blowing up Matt's legal office and getting Moon Knight shot in the head. Oh yeah, also Moon Knight was Ronin at the time. Daredevil's lie detecting powers immediately notice Iron Fist was the one responsible, them all getting pissed off at him before he reveals the Kingpin is threatening his daughter and he simply decided that her life was worth more than these costumed strangers. Matt decides to take a page out of the Kingpin's book, breaking into his home and threatening his sick wife, causing Fisk to show fear for the first time, though Spidey swings in and convinces Daredevil not to kill her, making a deal with the Kingpin, forcing him to leave the country forever, in return for them not leaking all his darkest secrets to Nick Fury. Though we suddenly flash into Moon Knight's head, revealing he's barely survived the bullet, and his personalities are desperately trying to wake him back up. The Ronin personality eventually beats the shit out of Mark, allowing him to drag himself out of the mud and into a police station, right in time for us to flash back to the Kingpin, demanding that Strange's hands be broken, Murdoch be killed on the courtroom steps, and Peter's school to burn down while class is in session. Unfortunately for him though, Moon Knight was never part of the deal to let him escape, so the cops show up, having him arrested before he's able to board the plane. Returning to the main universe, we get Submariner number 1. Tony Stark has just found Atlantis completely wiped out, Namor's skeleton chained to the throne, though we suddenly flash to 8 days earlier, as a town in Kansas is blown up by a group of terrorists. Their identities remaining a secret for the next few issues, but the main one is eventually revealed to be Kamar, long-lost son of Namor. Tony starts investigating the Kansas town, discovering a dead body with gills carved into its neck, immediately confronting Namor, who claims to have no knowledge of what happened, though nobody really trusts him, as civil war just happened. And that started with a villain named Nitro blowing up a town. And what a coincidence, Namor currently has Nitro held prisoner. He swears it wasn't his doing and vows to track down the true terrorists. First interrogating Nitro, though he doesn't seem to know anything. Later that night, however, Namor is suddenly attacked by his friend, easily defending himself and stabbing the traitor in the gut as the comic ends. You'll never guess who our next kid is, appearing in Skaar, Son of Hulk number 1. Starting off with a brief recap of Planet Hulk, showing the Illuminati sending Hulk into space, landing on a violent planet named Skaar where he helps free the slaves and becomes their king. But he had to go back to Earth when Skaar started erupting, which also killed his pregnant wife. Though what Hulk didn't know was that she gave birth right before dying. And while most children would have died on this planet by themselves, Skaar, son of Hulk, survives. Growing up as barbarians terrorize the planet, seemingly specifically targeting children, until one day the leader of the barbarians, Axeman Bone, discovers a special green child, incinerating them before chopping them into dust with his axe, announcing they finally killed the right kid, taking everyone he was hanging out with as slaves. Unfortunately for them though, that kid wasn't Skaar, the real one, showing up to kill all the guards before throwing himself at Axeman Bone as the comic ends. We get both a kid and a grandkid in Wolverine number. It's 50 years in the future, villains rule the world, and Old Man Logan has just accepted to help a blind Hawkeye transport some secret package across the country. This comic kicking off as Clint drives the spider buggy straight over a cliff. Logan yells at him for being reckless, but Clint says he has Wolverine to protect him, Logan claiming he isn't that man anymore. We then cut to that night as they arrive in San Francisco, quickly noticing the entire city is missing, as a group of Moloids have buried it, checking for any survivors before being attacked by a gang of Ghost Riders. Hawkeye asking his guard to protect the cargo, but Wolverine just takes their hits, refusing to fight back, though luckily they're yelling the entire time they beat him, allowing the blind Hawkeye to shoot them straight in the head. Clint asks Logan what the hell happened to him, as we get a brief flash of Wolverine fighting an army of villains, saying, "They broke me." We then cut to the next day, as they arrive in Hammer Falls, a superhero-themed tourist attraction with Mjolnir sitting at the center, quickly running into Ultron 8, who asks Clint to go see Tanya. Logan asking who Tanya is, and discovering she's both Peter Parker's daughter and Hawkeye's ex-wife. If it couldn't get any worse though, Tanya mentions that Ashley has been captured by the Kingpin, Ashley being their daughter, Spider-Bitch. Yes, that is her official name. And yes, she is both Hawkeye's kid and Spider-Man's grandkid. Though, luckily for him, he's dead in this timeline, so he never has to find out. But now you get to imagine Hawkeye sleeping with Peter Parker's daughter every time you use the skin. So, you're welcome for that. Keeping to alternate universes, we get Ultimate Avengers number 1. Nick Fury and Hawkeye are at SHIELD HQ discussing how Magneto just tried to kill the entire world. Though Hawkeye mentions they already have a new problem, as Captain America has gone rogue after discovering some secret information. We then flash back to a day earlier, as Cap and Hawkeye are called in to fight some AIM soldiers flying around New York. Tony is also called in, but he's kinda wasted, so he doesn't show up. Luckily, the duo is easily able to take down the first helicopter, though the second gets a little rough when the pilot is revealed to be the new Red Skull, beating the absolute fuck out of Cap, before whispering a secret in his ear and throwing him out of the helicopter. The comic ends with Hawkeye asking who Cap was fighting, and him responding, "My son." Taking a quick pit stop back in the main universe, we get Avengers number 1. Kang has warned the Avengers that the timeline is in danger, so they've recruited Marvel Boy to build them a time machine that lets them view alternate futures, including Days of Future Past and 2099, but also a timeline where the Avengers had kids, including Thor's daughter Torun and Black Panther's son Azari. They briefly watch them kill one of Kang's identities, Immortus, before the time machine is suddenly ruptured by a green mustached man. Though they don't get to question it for long, as Wonder Man suddenly bursts into the room, screaming about how they never should have reassembled the Avengers, before getting into a quick fight and disappearing. Again, they don't have time to question it though, though, as Apocalypse and his horsemen show up. Our last Ultimate Universe kid appears in Ultimate New Ultimates number 5. Loki has killed Thor's girlfriend Valkyrie, which has kinda caused him to snap and go insane, fighting against his team, the Ultimates. Though he outpowers all of them, the weaker members like Cap and Hawkeye easily being taken out, while their temporary exchange member from another universe, Zarda, manages to get a few good hits in before also being taken out. Tony then whips out this goofy looking Godbuster armor, though Thor simply rips it open, which distracts him long enough for Loki to head in for the kill. But he's suddenly speared through the neck, Thor turning around to see it was done by Valkyrie, kissing her before mentioning that she feels cold, as she mentions that she isn't actually alive. She's now one of Hela's soldiers, taking Loki's corpse back to her domain. The comic ends with Zarda returning to her home universe, while we cut to Loki in Valhalla, meeting Hela and Thor's son, Modi. Yes, I did say Hela and Thor, though before you freak out, they aren't related in this universe. We get another alternate future kid in Daredevil End of Days number 8. This storyline takes place in the future, right after Matt Murdock has been killed by Bullseye. This comic starting at the reporter Ben Urich's funeral, as he also died after trying to investigate Daredevil's death, along with a new Daredevil who'd just shown up. That new Daredevil turning out to be Ben's own son, Timothy, who's at the funeral along with Foggy Nelson, Peter Parker, and J. Jonah Jameson. We then cut to Tim at his apartment training, as Frank Castle walks in, telling him to use the anger he feels for good, otherwise he'll kill him. Tim mentioning that Daredevil's final words to Ben were Mapone, asking what that could possibly mean. Frank simply responding, "I've heard a lot of final words. It's always guilt," before stealing some pain meds and leaving. Tim then goes out to the bar with Peter, though his spidey senses suddenly go off, forcing him to leave, as Tim gets handed a note to go around back, meeting Nick Fury, offering him a file labeled Mapone, which pisses Tim off, because Ben died trying to find this exact information, telling Nick to go to hell and tossing it into a fire before heading back into the bar where a blind woman just won a bunch of money in a pool game. The guys assume she must have been lying about being blind, so they attack her, but Tim jumps in to help, though in the time it takes him to beat one guy, she beats the entire rest of the group, him asking her name, which turns out to be Mapone Romanova, Daredevil and Black Widow's daughter, as the comic ends by showing the burning file, revealing a picture of the three of them. We get the most confusing story in Wolverine and the X-Men number 36. Beast has time traveled the original 60s X-Men to the present, in the hopes that they can fix how edgy all the mutants have become. Unfortunately, some future X-Men have also showed up, claiming that the past X-Men are gonna screw up the timeline, and they need to go home now. They end up in a few different fights, the biggest being future Jean Grey versus the past Jean Grey, Emma Frost, and 3 of her Stepford Cuckoos. Emma and the kids are easily wiped out though, leaving just Jean v. Jean, the past one actually proving to be stronger, begging the old one to explain what happens in the future that makes her so evil, and then looking into her thoughts. We cut to the rest of the X-Men who've stopped fighting, as the future Deadpool starts to make a speech, explaining that the future is awful, worse than even the Days of Future Past timeline. It's so bad they had to resort to hiring Deadpool as an official X-Men, and he's decided he's done. If they won't let him save the future, he's just gonna shoot himself in the head, mentioning that his healing factor isn't as good as it used to be. The gun is suddenly lifted from his hands though, as the 2 Jean Greys walk up, the young one having seen the old one's memories and decided they were right. The past ones have to return to their original timeline now. Though we cut to the past versions of Iceman and Beast, who've decided they still don't trust these future X-Men, and it turns out Magic doesn't either, bringing the duo to the future, because apparently magic can time travel. Now, maybe my idea of a dystopian future is wrong, but this seems pretty chill, and even when some Sentinels show up, they don't attack the mutants, as they're owned by the real future X-Men, a team which includes Chimera, Storm's daughter. We get our first and only triplets on the list in 100th anniversary special Guardians of the Galaxy number 1. This comic takes place in the 2060s, as Galactus has merged with the Silver Surfer, so the future Guardians set off to help him, including Rocket and his sons, Uno, Duo, and Trey. Technically, these might not actually be his sons. They call him dad, but he calls them nephews, so it might be an adopted situation. I don't know. I say it counts. They get into a fight with Galactus's newest herald and former Guardians member, Major Victory, in the ruins of Asgard, which has been overgrown by Yggdrasil. The Guardians seem to actually have the upper hand, despite Vance's massive army of Punishers, until it turns out he was just distracting them, giving Galactus enough time to reach nowhere. He doesn't actually want to eat nowhere though, wanting to merge with the Celestial's brain inside, which will apparently give him access to every universe. They get into another massive fight with Iron Man turning into a weird MODOK form for like actual actually no reason. But unfortunately, Galactus is too strong for them. Though right before he's able to kill them, he's suddenly knocked out by Major Victory, unmasking himself to reveal he's actually Peter Quill in disguise. We have the most debatable addition to this list in Deadpool Too Soon Infinite Comic number 2. Bushman, a Marvel character older than even the Fantastic Four, has just died. Deadpool attending his funeral and announcing he's gonna find whoever murdered him. His girlfriend Shikla wishing him well on his hunt before Squirrel Girl shows up, asking if she can help. Though Deadpool distracts her before running away, so she chases him, and he runs, and she chases him, and he runs, and she chases him, and he runs, and she chases him. That goes on for a while, until he gets blocked by a subway ticket machine, and she offers to let him use hers, deciding to team up, following the train tracks to an old Avengers hideout, where they find a teleporter, both getting into it without noticing the massive do not use sign. It seems to go fine though, exiting the portal to find Rocket and Groot, who have also decided to track down Bushman's killer. Unfortunately, they don't get to talk for long, as Squirrelpool shows up, a hybrid mix of Deadpool and Squirrel Girl created by the broken teleporter. And this is why I said it was a debatable addition, because it's definitely a clone, but since it's half Doreen and half Wade, you could argue that makes it their kid, and Squirrelpool does actually call them mother and father. It's also the only option for Squirrel Girl, so we get the most children by far in all new Guardians of the Galaxy number 2. The Grand Master has instructed the Guardians to break into the Collector's Museum and steal some powerful egg. Unfortunately, his place is heavily fortified against any possible kind of attack, except Trojan horsing through a living creature's asshole, which wasn't even really worth it, as they're immediately caught by guards, though they pretty easily take them out. Eventually, they find the egg, but some more guards show up. These ones with the powers to make you see your worst fear, like Groot decomposing or Peter watching Earth explode. Luckily for them though, Drax's biggest fear scares the guards more than it scares Drax, causing them to run away. Their luck doesn't last long, as pretty soon after, the Collector himself catches them. The comic ending by cutting to another planet, where the Gardener is feeding his massive army of Groots, mentioning that not all of them are gonna survive, as one is ripped apart by Skaar, Groot's kid. Well, technically they're all Groot's children, but Skaar is like the main one, and also they're his kids because they were grown from him, like baby Groot in the movies. Later that year, we got Moon Knight number 190. Mark Spector's longtime enemy Bushmaster has discovered a secret that his other personality, Jake, has been hiding from him. Though Bushmaster is actually so scared of Moon Knight that he hasn't been able to use the info, until he met the Sun King, the newest avatar of Ra, teaming up to amass an army of Moon Knight's victims to take him down. Like, look at this crowd, they're all like missing limbs or eyes and stuff. These are all people who Moon Knight has beat the absolute shit out of. We cut to Moon Knight's head as his personalities are fighting. Mark is pissed off because he's found out Jake has been hiding stuff from him, though Jake points out that's literally why he exists. Mark is the main voice of reason, Steven is their source of income, and Jake deals with all the grimy leftovers. Mark quickly accepting he's right, before we cut to the Sun King and Bushmaster taking Mark's ex-wife Marlene hostage. She calls him while he's fighting some criminals, so he rushes over to save her, Bushmaster forcing Marlene to admit she never stopped loving Mark even after they split. So she started sleeping with Jake, in the hopes that it would feel like being with Mark. But it wasn't, though she couldn't stop seeing him, as she couldn't take care of their daughter, Diatrice, alone. We get the least eventful comic in Venom number 7. Eddie and Venom have just defeated Null's symbiote dragon, though they're severely injured and end up being saved by the Maker. This entire comic just being a conversation between Eddie and Reed, as he believes the symbiotes could hold the key to some cool science shit. He also reveals that he actually didn't find Eddie right after the dragon fight, as Venom had taken control of his body and went on the run for 3 weeks before the Maker finally found him outside Eddie's childhood home, where his dad and son Dylan are. Though Dylan actually doesn't know that Eddie's his father, and also he's actually both Eddie and Venom's son, being half human, half symbiote. Finally, Reed points out that only 2 of them have spoken this entire conversation, as Eddie suddenly realizes Venom is dead. Well, his personality and voice are. Eddie still has access to the symbiote's powers. The Maker does mention that Venom could be revived by reconnecting to the symbiote hive mind, but only one person has ever done that, and unfortunately, Flash Thompson recently died. We get one of the shortest lived kids in Fallen Angels number 1. Psylocke's 2 personalities have finally been separated, Quanon peacefully meditating on Krakoa, until she suddenly gets a vision warning her of a new god being created, named Apoth, and that she needs to head to a train station in Tokyo to stop it. Unfortunately, Krakoa is currently on full lockdown, no one allowed in or her out. But Magneto is the one in charge, and while he can't officially let her off the island, he can accidentally direct her to Mr. Sinister, who has his own way off the island. Though we quickly cut to X-23 and a young Cable, which is kind of funny since they're both kids of Rivals characters, but I haven't talked about either of them in this video, getting into a brief sparring match before Psylocke recruits them to join her, heading off to Tokyo where she's able to use her old connections from her assassin days to obtain some security footage of a child with a butterfly tattoo attaching some device to their head and then murdering a bunch of people, suddenly getting a flashback of her own daughter, Himiko, being taken away and branded with a butterfly tattoo as some kind of assassin training. Psylocke flips out, demanding they give her more info about Epoch, but her connection claims they know nothing. So Psylocke stabs them in the head and drains the info out, leading to a barn filled with kids, who instantly all drop dead, except one, who Apoth uses to taunt Psylocke before also dropping dead. The comic ends with her asking X-23 and Cable to find some trustworthy team members. We get our first space adoption in Empire Fallout Fantastic Four #1. Mantis' son Qua and his race, the Quati, have just waged a war against the Kree and Skrull empires, who put aside their millennia-old beef to unite and win, now being ruled by former Young Avengers member Emperor Hulkling. This comic is mostly just about the characters resting on the moon after the war, including 2 orphans, the Kree Joven and Skrull and Kala, who were saved from a child fighting ring. The heroes decide, instead of imprisoning Qua and his people for their crimes, they'll simply give them a new planet, incredibly far away from anyone else, quickly terraforming it to suit their needs. Though they keep the Quati's technology, calling in the Profiteer to study it, which the orphans aren't very happy about, as she was the one running the child fighting ring, but she agrees to check out the weapons, commenting on how they're an incredibly ancient technology, and that she wants it all, along with the children back. The Avengers assemble to stop her, but she whips out a contract, claiming that the Kree and Skrull are her biggest clients, and they wouldn't be very happy about the Avengers messing up their relationship. Though Hulkling grabs the contract and rips it apart, telling her that the Kree and Skrull are under new management. She runs away, and Hulkling asks the Fantastic Four to keep the orphans. Reed and Sue immediately saying yes, though that's actually not who he was talking to, pointing to Ben Grimm and Alicia Masters, who agree to adopt the kids. The comic ends by cutting to the Unseen, a guy who replaced Uatu the Watcher after he died, and has also been watching this entire comic unfold. He checks out the Quati's weapons for himself and realizes they predate even the Celestials, as suddenly his eye bursts open and Uatu pops out. We get one of the strangest kids in Black Widow #2. Natasha disappeared 3 months ago, but Hawkeye and Bucky have just found her living in a mansion married to some random guy, so they've gone out to investigate, debating whether they should even interfere, before Clint gets into a conversation with her, where she doesn't seem to know him, but also seems to be happy with her life, as suddenly Stevie Gray, her son, walks into the room, which confuses the fuck out of Clint, since the kid is way older than the 3 months she's been gone. He leaves and we cut to the villain Arcade, who seems to be the one responsible for Natasha's new life, along with a bunch of other mysterious people he's on a call with, but they actually tell him to leave Clint and Bucky alone, as seeing them fight might trigger her. She doesn't really need them to do that though, as later that night she's out walking around town when she finds a woman cornered in an alleyway by some guys, beating the fuck out of them without even trying, and seeming confused at how she did it, heading home where she zones out and accidentally builds a bomb as the comic ends. We get our final space kid in Guardians of the Galaxy #13, kicking it off on the planet Throne World 2, capital of the new Kree-Skrull Alliance. Unfortunately, their new peace doesn't last very long, as the Progenitors arrive, a race of highly advanced beings who just like to experiment on living creatures. Luckily though, the king of the Empire, Hulkling, and his boyfriend Wiccan, aka Billy Maximoff, are there to fight back, but they aren't quite strong enough to take the beings down, calling in the Guardians of the Galaxy for backup, including Master of the Sun Peter Quill, who recently got trapped in another dimension for over 100 years, giving him a ton of time to practice using his elemental guns, becoming essentially a god with them, filling Groot with all the nutrients required to grow to the Progenitor's massive size. Eventually, Nova grabs onto the final survivor's head, launching it in the direction of the Progenitor's home planet, and asking it to warn them that this galaxy is guarded. After the fight, the gang starts to rest up, Gamora trying to kiss Peter, but he refuses, stating that the 100 years he was trapped changed him. It became his home, his family. He even had a son named Rocket, though he'll never get to see his son again because time moves faster in that other dimension. And we also never get to see the kid again. We then cut to the other half of the Guardians who are on a different planet, following rumors of a Skrull cult and discovering the Brethren of the Forgotten Flame. The comic ending by cutting back to the first group. We're all getting the shit kicked out of them by a man who makes fun of their titles, Master of the Sun and King of Space, claiming the only title he's ever needed is Doctor, which just isn't true. Doom probably has the most titles any character in Marvel history has ever had. I think he's going by fucking Emperor Doom right now. We get our shortest story in Free Comic Book Day 2022 Avengers/X-Men #1. This comic was released for free as an advertisement for some upcoming events, including Avengers vs. X-Men vs. Eternals and the Hellfire Gala. But we'll find our kid in the prelude to Bloodline. Brielle and her friend Jaden have just won a gaming tournament, though second place, a vampire named Eternal, is a bit of a sore loser, trying to rob them for the prize money. But Brielle's bracelets are made out of silver, burning him before she knocks him out with a controller. Heading home where her mother wishes her a good night before opening a chest to reveal Brielle is Blade's daughter. And for our final comic, I normally like to show you all the remaining options and let you guess, but I feel like this one might be kinda obvious. Appearing in Avengers Twilight #1. The Age of Heroes is over. Steve Rogers simply being an old man going on morning walks with his friends, Luke Cage and Matt Murdock, complaining about the newfangled technology spying on them 24/7, before heading home to find out there's a documentary series explaining how the Red Skull was actually a good guy. Steve mentioning that nobody cares about the truth anymore, deciding to take a stand by going on the news. Unfortunately, they put him in a debate against James Stark, Tony's son and current CEO of Stark Industries, who claims that Steve is against free speech, before also blaming him for the events of H-Day, when Ultron took control of the Hulk, rampaging through innocent civilians, ending the trust anyone had in those heroes forever. Steve gets a flashback to Spider-Man dying before leaving the building and going on a walk, where he finds some cops beating up a group of kids for staying out past curfew. Steve deciding to relive his glory days, and well, I haven't actually mentioned it yet, but the super soldier serum kinda ran out, so Steve's just an actual regular old guy now, getting the shit kicked out of him before he's saved by Luke Cage, telling him that Matt's been murdered and they can't just keep letting the world spiral anymore, revealing he's found a vial of the super soldier serum, making Steve Captain America once more, as the comic ends with James talking to Tony, who's just a floating head and chest now.